What's up, everybody? Welcome to Make Things Tiny. My name is Mick, and today is all about shipping containers and tiny house A-frame cabins. I'm talking to Tony. Tony is the founder and CEO of Alternative Living Spaces. Alternative Living Spaces is a shipping container company based out of Las Vegas. Tony's going to talk about their backstory, what sort of inspired them to create the company, the different models that they offer, and make sure that you watch to the end because Tony's going to talk about a tiny house A-frame cabin village. So I'm really super excited for you guys to learn more about that. So if you're new to the channel, please do take time to subscribe. It helps me out a ton, helps me continue to grow this fantastic community of wonderful people that are passionate about tiny homes. If you tap the notification bell, it lets you know when I drop new videos. I drop new videos every single week. So, all right, let's get into it. Let's talk about shipping containers and tiny house A-frame cabins. So I'm here today with Tony. Tony is the founder and the CEO of Alternative Living Spaces, which is a really awesome container homes company based out of Las Vegas. Thank you so much for being on the channel, Tony. I'm excited to just get to chat with you and learn more about what you do. Do you mind just taking a minute and talking a little bit about what got you interested in shipping containers and tiny homes, and then we'll go from there?
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, I appreciate you having me on as well, Mick. It's great to be on. And yeah, so for me, it started back in like 2016 or maybe even like 2015. I was just really interested in starting a business and was asking myself the question of like, what's a problem that exists and can I come up with a solution to it? And, a lot of times you'll hear people say like, identify something that you hate and something that you want to be fixed in the world. And that may be like your calling, so to speak, right? And so for me, I hated the cost of living. And I just didn't make sense to me. Like I just thought, man, why is it so expensive? And this was 2015, which now everything's probably double.
Yep.
And so it's only gotten worse. And so I just said, man, there has to be a better way. And I remember going home to visit my parents one night, and my dad has a construction background. He had actually built my sister a treehouse, and it was like not your normal treehouse. Like it was kind of like a livable space. And I remember talking with him, and I was like, how much did it cost you to build it? And he was like, oh, about $1,000. And he used like reused materials and, things like that. He did the labor. So he did it for super cheap, but it was like a 10 by 20 space with a sliding glass door. And I literally thought to myself like, man, I could actually live in this space. And so that's what like sparked my mind, because at that time my rent for my apartment was $1,000 a month. And I just remember thinking like, man, in 1 month I could live in something for the cost that it's just to rent something for a month. So it just made me feel like there's something off here. And so at that time, I was working for a furniture delivery company. We did a delivery one time to a warehouse, and it was for a company called Idea Box. And inside of the warehouse were a bunch of containers that were converted into offices, and they looked incredible. And I remember seeing those, and I was inspired. I was like, oh my gosh, it would be so cool to turn one of these into a little house. And so that weekend, I hopped on Craigslist and looked up shipping containers for the first time, just trying to see what do these things cost. And I ran into someone that had been in the process of converting a 20-foot container into a little restaurant booth kind of thing for an expo here in town. And their client fell through, and they were at a point where they were just like, hey, I'm just kind of getting rid of it. And they're not, they were selling it for a great price. So I ended up meeting with the guy, and kind of long story short, I don't want to take it too long, but there's some really cool things around this story. But at the end of the day, I did purchase it for about $3,900, which was literally every penny to my name. Had it delivered to my parents' house. It already had like window cutouts in it and some basic electrical and flooring. And then, began building out the first container home.
That's awesome. I think that's really cool that your dad built that treehouse for your sister too. And I think also just the solution, just in your head, the light bulb going off, like, why am I paying so much in rent when I could just build something to live in?
It's wild.
So
Yeah, it is
that's pretty
crazy.
cool. Yeah. How long did it take you for that first build before you were able to like fully live in it? How long did that process take?
Yeah, good question. I would say probably about 9 months to a year. So it was something that I bootstrapped. So like I'd spent every penny on it. So at the time I was working like 2 jobs or something. So I would just work at those jobs, save up whatever money I made, and then, go buy materials that weekend to start on whatever phase was next. And I had a Mustang at the time, sold my Mustang, got into a little 2002 Honda Civic with no AC in Vegas, cashed out probably like $7,000 doing that and put that into materials. So yeah, it was just kind of baby steps, probably, 8 to 10 hours a week of labor I was kind of throwing at it. And so, yeah, about 9 months later, or about 12 months later, maybe it got completed.
That's not too bad. It's cool that you like sort of learned everything as you went too and just kind of put everything you had into it. I feel like sometimes that's the best way to learn.
For
Um,
sure.
how did it evolve into what it is today with the company sort of like at the scale that you're doing things now? How did that sort of evolve over time?
Yeah, it's a good question. So when I was building this first one, the intent was always to resell it.
Mhm.
So as I shared at the beginning, I was trying to figure out a business, a problem to solve, all of that. So built out the first container and ended up having a good friend of mine that does videography and stuff come over, help me create like a tour video, take photos of it. And I had reached out to Tiny House Listing, so
Okay.
Stephen Harrell, and just check to see like, hey, I built a container home and now I'm looking to sell it. Like I noticed your channel promotes tiny homes and stuff. Could I list it on there or put a video out on your channel? And he was really receptive to it. And so he kind of he reached back out to me and was like, yeah, when you do it, just hold your phone horizontally and some things like that. And thankfully, I happened to be in a group of like a friend circle where I had some really awesome videographers, like really incredible guys. So I reached out to one of them. He was willing to come and film it and make like a really awesome video. So he created it. He's editing it. We get that over to Steven. He lets me know the air date. And a day before the air date, I launched the website, which was basically just that model. Like, hey, created this model. If anyone else is interested in me making something like this, like, hey, let me know and I'd be happy to make another one. And so, yeah, so we posted that video on that channel and it went viral, which is really cool. So it got over 2 million views.
Wow.
And at that, I had launched the website the day before. And so all of a sudden, I'm getting all these emails. Like I think in the first couple days, I mean, I don't know, it was probably like 50 emails a day. So it
Wow.
definitely wasn't like something I could keep up with or even
Mhm.
really knew how to manage. It was just kind of like trying to respond to people. And surprisingly, the unit didn't sell right away. It still took like 30 to 60 days for it to sell. And after that first unit sold, whatever money I made from that, I just rolled into the first little warehouse space. And so rented a small warehouse here in town. It was like 1,000 square feet, $1,000 a month, and happened during that time to also get the first real client. And so he wanted something almost identical to it. And so, yeah, just kind of rolled into starting that build and trying to keep that little snowball rolling.
That's awesome. I think it's cool.
Yeah,
Like your timing was perfect for putting up the website too. So
it's
that really
crazy.
worked out that you put it out like the second you did, so that people could reach out to you after that video did so well. So
It
that's
worked
really cool.
out. Yeah, thankful for Wix and that they have the little, the DIY version. You can just throw something together.
Yeah,
So it worked
that's
out.
true.
It's
So
funny.
what sorts of models do you offer now?
Yeah, so so we still primarily focus on container homes. I'd say that's kind of like our main core product, and we'll do a lot of tiny homes, so 20-foot container homes, 30-foot container homes, or 40-foot container homes.
Hmm.
We also do container offices. We do container pools, container gyms. So kind of like, I mean, it's a container. You can kind of turn it into anything. We've done coffee shops,
Yeah.
bars. So kind of if you want something out of a container, at the end of the day, we could probably help you out. And then we also started getting into doing like micro A-frame cabins. And so we'll
Mhm.
do little 10-foot by 12-foot, like modular modern cabins, or we'll do some larger ones that are like 20 feet by 12 feet. And those are primarily being used for like a lot of people that are in the Airbnb glamping kind of space, just a way to kind of like elevate their property and, offer a kind of a unique experience for guests. Um, and then I'm trying to think if there's anything else we got going on. We're always trying to like come up with new products, right? So
Yeah.
I think at the moment that's kind of it. But we do have some new innovations with the A-frames that we're coming up with, where
Mhm.
they're going to be flat packed, and then once they arrive to
Oh,
your
cool.
property, you can kind of use a crane if you wanted to, and you just lift the top up, and it just kind of like unfolds. So it's like a foldable A-frame.
Cool.
So we're excited about that. That'll be, I think, it'll keep costs a lot lower, shipping a lot cheaper, and install will still just be like a couple hours for someone, which would be cool.
Okay, that's cool. I could see that be really that being really popular. I was
I
going to
hope
ask about that
so.
with the cost side because I know that in general, like a shipping container isn't too expensive to
Yeah.
purchase. Like, do you feel like being on the shipping container side of sort of like the tiny house industry allows you to keep your costs down when it comes to production compared to if you were building the same size but it was going to be like a standard tiny house?
That's a really good question. So kind of like two thoughts to that. One is I kind of got into the containers because it just seemed like like it seemed very doable. Like I was like,
Mhm.
oh, I could do this because it's just a steel box. Like I don't know anything at the time. I don't know nothing about framing. I don't know anything about whatever waterproofing. Like it's already waterproofed and it's a box. So like the barrier to entry in that sense wasn't very high, which was nice. I'd say in terms of cost, I don't know if it's more cost effective than a tiny home. I think I probably couldn't confidently say that. I will say a lot of the tiny homes, you know, more often than not, of course, they're on wheels, right? Tiny homes on wheels is obviously really popular, and that helps with zoning regulations and all of that. And so we do container homes on wheels. So I bet if you took like one of our, say, 160 square foot container models, you put it on wheels and compared it to a tiny home model, I tend to think our prices would be pretty comparable.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good to know. I wasn't sure because like you would think the shipping container might be more cost effective, but then the same things go into it with the designing and the framing and all the insulation and stuff like that too. So that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. If you were in an area, like we do work with a lot of clients that are in rural areas with low regulation and you don't need it on wheels, then yeah, you'd probably save maybe 10, 15 grand going the container tiny home route.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. I know that you like briefly mentioned the A-frames, and like I've seen a lot more like A-frame builds coming up, like especially on YouTube. Like it seems to become more popular for like Airbnbs and stuff like that because it's such a striking sort of like design at first.
Hmm.
I know you mentioned like the A-frame like cabin village on your YouTube channel. Do you mind talking a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we got to work with a client out of Orderville, Utah. So it's Cliffside RV Resort. And so they're about 30 minutes outside of Zion. So they're positioned in a great location. So they get a lot of traffic for people visiting the national park. And they also are on like a beautiful property, like cliff sides behind it that are all pink and red. And so we originally did 5 container homes for them, 20-foot tiny homes with rooftop decks.
Hmm.
That was back in maybe like 2018, 2019. And then they had reached out probably like 2021, 2022. And in a lot of ways, our A-frame design was probably inspired by this client because he always wants something new and different. Like if he bought the containers, he doesn't want more containers, right? He wants something different. And so, yeah, I think he was a little bit of the inspiration. Like he would send me a lot of photos of like A-frames and things like that. And so, yeah, so eventually we stumbled into creating the first model. He really liked it. And from there, he placed his order for 5 of them. And so we did 5, we call them micro A-frame cabins. And it's awesome. He built these like 20-foot by 20-foot elevated platforms on his property, basically decks. And our units are 10-foot by 12-foot. So they eventually got placed kind of towards the center of that space. And they had nice little like walk around deck areas. The units that we did were mainly like a bedroom space. So there's like a bed inside, little kitchenette, collapsible bar top, of course, HVAC, all that. And then he had a separate like bathhouse, so to speak, that the 5 units had access to that had like, 3 bathroom stalls or something. So that's how he had it set up. And, I got to talk with him probably about 4 months ago. I was up in his area and he was saying that they've been performing really, really incredible. He doesn't allow me to tell the numbers actually, so I can't, but they have been performing really well.
That's awesome. That's great. I mean, they
Yeah.
seem like a really like convenient and also just aesthetically really nice. So I can see where people just get excited about it. Just like from a novelty standpoint, it's cool to some people to sort of, and also sometimes they have like really nice windows. I've seen one with like it's
Yeah.
like floor to ceiling windows and like they're just like a fun design. It seems like.
Yeah, we've noticed there's a lot of demand, especially on like Airbnb. There's an entire category, devoted to
Oh
them,
yeah,
which
there
is
is.
pretty
Yeah.
cool. So I think that helps like kind of like the SEO side. Like if people are trying to search, for something, you're going to rank pretty well that way. And like I've heard some other guys in the Airbnb space talk about like ranking unique Airbnb rentals by demand, and usually they'll have like tree houses number 1,
Mhm.
container will be down here around number 4 or 5, Airstream somewhere in that range. And usually number 2, they'll have A-frame. So yeah, it seems like that's something that people really like to stay in. And I've even seen like in southern Utah, not where ours are located, there's one that's probably about an hour from ours, and it's like a pretty famous one. It's like really it's like in a really incredible location, like up on a hill facing Zion, like really exclusive with a hot tub. And they're getting like, I think it's like $600 to $700 per night, which
Whoa.
sounds fake, but it's
It does.
actually a thing.
It does. I believe it. I believe that people are
It's
paying it.
crazy.
So yeah. I've saw this
Yeah.
like really like intense looking like giant dome shaped Airbnb like in the desert parts. I think it's like in California, like it's here somewhere.
Hmm.
It's like a $1,200 a night. Like it's a massive and it's like
Wow.
really really luxurious. But yeah, no, I think it's really cool to see. Like I think this is a cool time to be a part of the tiny house industry, like in any capacity, because people are really excited about it. I think that social media is really like giving people like like lots of different images of like different houses and ways to get creative. So that's pretty cool that people are getting excited enough to pay $700 a night to stay in to
It's
stay in something.
crazy. Yeah, you know what? Domes is definitely in the top five too, by the way. So
Mhm.
those rank really well, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
So what's sort of like your vision for the company in the next few years? Like I know that you've grown pretty well at this rate in the past few years, having started in like 2016 sort of like time period, like and you've got some really awesome models and great price points and stuff like that too. Like what's sort of next to you in terms of what where you want the company to go from here?
Yeah, it's a great question. I feel like, you know, in the early days, our mission was really how do we make an impact with affordable housing? And that
Mhm.
still is at the core of what we want to do. So unfortunately, it feels like we're just hitting our head against the wall sometimes
Mhm.
because it's so difficult to either get financing for these units or to, find placement for them in a lot of sense. And so we're kind of in like, we have our feet in kind of like two worlds right now. So we still are always looking for opportunities to try to make a difference in the affordable housing realm. But then we've also just naturally, unintentionally attracted a lot of people that are in the Airbnb investor nightly rental space.
Mhm.
And so um, at the moment, we're at a point where we're in a really exciting time for our business.
Mhm.
We are also, so we manufacture here in Vegas, but we are in the process of, um, we've partnered with a manufacturer overseas as well that's producing our same models. And so we're getting our prototypes for those next month. And, if everything checks out, which we do expect it to, it's going to allow us to mass produce units. And then the goal is going to be to expand locations. So like right now, we're just in Vegas. We can serve the West Coast really well. But as you know, like if someone says in Florida wants one,
Right.
it's going to be expensive to ship it.
Mhm.
And so we're in the process of partnering with, a key partner in Texas and another one in Florida so that when we have these units manufactured overseas, we can then have them kind of distributed fairly evenly across the US so that when we have people reach out, that are really interested, they aren't going to be sticker shocked with a shipping price, that
Right.
we'll actually have units that are nearby for them. And so we want to just keep on serving our existing clients in terms of like that Airbnb rental space, and then always be on the lookout for the opportunity to make an impact with affordable housing, and hopefully here in the near future, be able to do our own kind of tiny home community as well.
Mhm. I love that. I think that's really great. It
Yeah.
makes sense to try to sort of move east a bit too, because there is a lot of demand over there. I feel like there's a lot of
Mhm.
interest, but yeah, there's just not as many people. I feel like in the industry that are doing it at scale, which makes sense. So I think that makes sense if you're able to partner with people. Then someone watches your YouTube channel and they really want one, but they don't want to pay for shipping. They can go to your location some like further east. So I think that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, and I hope, yeah, like what you're sharing is good feedback too. Like we've seemed to have noticed just by looking around, like it seems like Texas seems to be a really big
Hmm.
market, right? Like there's
Hmm.
lower regulation, a lot of interest in this stuff. So yeah, I mean, we haven't done a lot in like the Midwest, not like we've done some in the East Coast, but yeah, that'll be a whole new market for us. So interested in learning more about it.
Yeah, I think the cost of living is just as high in places on the East Coast
Mm.
as it is here. And with more people like aging and wanting to retire, I think people instantly think of Florida, and there are tiny house communities in Florida and ones popping up in Florida, but not everybody wants that climate. So I can see there being like a demand for people, wanting to move to Tennessee. Like I know there are a lot of people that are really interested in living outside of Nashville or like Georgia, like those sorts of areas. So I can see those places picking up over time.
That'd be sweet. Yeah, no, especially since you know so much about the tiny house community space. I'm like, I got to learn from you. Yeah, see what areas seem to
Yeah.
be more palatable to tiny homes.
Yeah, that's cool. It's awesome.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for someone that's like interested in sort of like buying a shipping container and sort of like trying to figure out how to either turn it into a living space for themselves or like a rental, like based on some of your experience now?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'll say is like it's a really fun journey to do it. Like I'm so happy I did it. Like it was
Mhm.
it was a great learning experience. Ultimately, it was a good investment. In the end, you can sell it, you can use it, you can rent it, you can live in it full time. So I think you have a lot of flexibility. It's also, like tiny homes, they're portable, so you can build it in one location. If you relocate or you want to move it to a property to rent it out, you just have a lot of flexibility. So I definitely think it's something that anyone can do. Like that's something like I'm always sharing on our YouTube channel. Like, hey, you don't have to have a construction background. Honestly, I had no construction background, like literally zero. Like I worked for a delivery company and I assembled furniture. That was like the extent of my handyman abilities. And I'm already not naturally a handy person, just being honest. Like I have great builders on our team. I'm not the best builder, I promise. And so, yeah, if you're someone out there and you're like, hey, I don't have a ton of experience, then I totally would say you're okay. And you don't need a crazy budget. Budget will be affected by where you're located. So in major cities, if you're trying to do it as a permitted build, you're going to have a lot of red tape. There's more hoops to jump through. It'll increase your costs. But for those that are looking to do like single container conversions, you just have more flexibility. You can put it on wheels and still accomplish it in a very cost-effective way. Like my very first 20-foot container home I built on my parents' property. This was 2016, but my cost was about $13,000, which is nothing, right? Like that's relatively speaking for a very like fully functioning livable space, kitchen, bathroom, HVAC, bed, all that. So yeah, I still think containers are an awesome type of structure to build out. Super durable. They can be affordable, portable, all that. I would say just do your research up front. I think in two areas you want to do your research. Number one, regarding kind of the zoning and building regulations for what you're trying to do. I think there's a lot of misconceptions that people just aren't educated in this area, and they think, hey, I'm just going to buy this land and I'm going to start putting my container homes up. And you definitely want to reach out to your zoning and building department before you buy the land and see what they'll allow you to do. Sometimes you'll have minimum square footage requirements that they want you to meet, or they may have CCNRs about how the outside needs to look, or all those kinds of things. And then I'd say also doing good research on the actual build out of your container, because there are some really important things during that process that you could do wrong. And on the first container, there were things that I definitely did wrong that were quality issues, right? So like I would never do a build like I did my first one because it just was the first one I tried, And so there was things I did my research, tried to do my best, and it turned out good. But, there's things that weren't perfect about it. And so doing your research, trying to understand, what insulation you should be using, maybe best way to frame it out, how to run your plumbing, some basic things like that, just to make sure you're in good shape. But there's a lot of resources out there. And so, there's a lot of people that have documented their builds and a lot of people you can learn from.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's really great advice too, because I do feel like the more you learn in the beginning, the less maybe mistakes you'll make along the way. And that, anything that can save you time, can also save you money. So I think that's good advice. That's a good point.
Sure. Definitely.
Yeah, cool.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me, Tony. I think that anyone that watches this video is going to learn a ton, and links to everything that you're doing will be in the video description. So your website, your Instagram, all that. So hopefully they can reach out to you and ask questions and hopefully find their next dream container home.
Awesome, Nick. Well, thank you so much for having me on, and appreciate what you're doing and helping educate and create awareness.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. We'll talk soon. All right, that was my conversation with Tony. I appreciate Tony taking the time to talk to us a little bit about their experience and how they sort of like put everything they had into their first container home build, and it really paid off, and how the business is sort of taken off from there. And if you're interested in learning more about Tony and everything that they're doing, and if you're interested in staying in the tiny house A-frame cabins, which I've seen on the website, they look really cool. Make sure you check out their website, check out their YouTube channel. I learn a lot by watching their YouTube videos, so make sure you check out their YouTube channel, their Instagram as well too, and reach out and ask questions. The more questions you can ask, the more time and money it saves you. So make sure that you reach out too. And if you're new to the channel, please take time to subscribe. It helps me out a ton. If you tap that notification bell, you find out when I drop new videos. I drop new videos every single week, and I love to hear from you guys. So please do take the time to drop information in the comments. What do you want to see? If there's anyone you think I should reach out to, love to have people on the channel based on your recommendations too. And as always, don't forget to think tiny. I'll see you guys in the next one.